So hi everyone, welcome to today's session, and we're going to talk about how to build a career in blockchain law. As always, let's keep this interactive. So whatever questions you have, I'll also take them. Let me begin by sharing my screen. Just a second. I hope my screen is visible to all of you. It should say blockchain law against a light purple background. Awesome. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that when we use the term blockchain law, what do we really mean? Because a lot of people feel that blockchain is a technology. How can a technology be regulated? So the generic word blockchain, when we use, we cover things like crypto assets, DAOs, which is decentralized autonomous organizations, DeFi, which is decentralized finance, Metaverse, tokenization of assets, which could mean tokenization of real world assets on the blockchain, and Web3. So all of these concepts come under the ambit of the word blockchain law. Hope that part is clear to everyone. Now let's try to go a little deeper into it. So let me first begin with what are the kind of career opportunities that are there. So for example, that you could be advising blockchain, crypto, DeFi, and Web3 startups on legal compliances in various countries. Now, this is a very important issue because as you keep reading in the media, currently a lot of the Indian crypto exchanges are in very serious trouble with the enforcement directorate because they have not complied with the money laundering laws. So there are so many different laws that actually apply, but many people are unaware of them. So let me give you some simple examples. So in fact, even when we talk about the Indian law, so a lot of us do know that the Income Tax Act applies because the Income Tax Act is the single law in India under which cryptos are defined. So you have things like non-fungible tokens, virtual digital assets, and then there are not just in the main act, but there are some notifications which have come in under which cryptos are regulated. So that becomes one. Then we have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So as you know, money laundering basically is the act of converting black money into white, and it is very heavily punished. I mean, there is a very long, severe jail term and huge fines. And many of the crypto projects today, especially the exchanges, are actually in trouble with the money laundering laws. Then we have a law called Black Money and Imposition of Tax Act. Now, that's a law which actually most people have never even heard. In fact, let me just ask you a quick question. Had you guys ever heard about this law before? The Black Money and Imposition of Tax Act? Could someone give me a yes or a no? Okay. Oh, Ritesh had, that's nice. So, yeah, that's another very interesting law which many people didn't know about before. Then, of course, we have the Indian Penal Code. So, when we talk about these various kinds of crimes like rug pulls and so many other things which are happening, they are actually covered by the Indian Penal Code. Then we have the Information Technology Act, which again covers certain kinds of crimes as well as certain kinds of legal issues are covered under that. Did you guys know about the Binami Property Transactions Act? Or that's another one that many people have actually not heard of. So Benami basically means when you hold some property in someone else's name. It's your property, but to hide it from the government, you show someone else as the owner. And that's very common in crypto, for example. So in that case, the prohibition of Benami Property Transaction Act would also apply. And then, of course, it is important for us to know the Supreme Court judgment. This was the crypto ban judgment. Although I'll be very honest with you, that's a misconception. Crypto was never banned in India. It was that the Reserve Bank of India gave a direction to the banks saying that you are not allowed to give banking services to crypto exchanges. They never really had the jurisdiction to ban crypto. Anyway, the Supreme Court later then cancelled that particular order. So that judgment is also very critical. Abhishek's question is, can that person be fictitious also? Yes, Abhishek. Even the fictitious people would be covered under that. So, like I said, the first kind of career opportunity is advising all the startups and crypto exchanges under the laws of India, US, Japan, European Union, Malta, and Singapore. Now, again, why these particular countries? Because these are the countries that have actually made very substantial laws around crypto regulations. So India, of course, we know there are many laws that apply. In the US, there are lots of legal issues, especially You have the Competition Commission there, the FinCEN, you have the IRS, and so many of their regulatory bodies have come out with a lot of regulations around crypto. So we cover that, and that's very, very important. And then, of course, we have Japan, which was probably the first country in the world to regulate crypto, the European Union, Malta, which has some very interesting laws, and of course, Singapore. So any questions on this first part? If it's all clear, if you could just say all clear, I'll just continue. If there are questions, you can definitely post them. Okay. The second is advising startups on DeFi-based fundraising. Now, this is a very, very critical thing, and let me just tell you a little bit more about it. So when we talk about fundraising mechanisms, so if you look at my screen, there are actually many ways in which companies can raise money through the Web3 or blockchain systems. So you may have heard about ICOs, initial coin offerings. Those are not so popular anymore, but you actually have things like initialized exchange offerings, DEX offerings, and you can even issue security offerings like tokens and equity shares through the blockchain-based systems. So now these are very, very critical fundraising mechanisms, and obviously each of them comes with their own legal complications. So that's another very important area of opportunity which is there, that you can advise companies, and it's not just blockchain startups. You know, even existing real world companies are looking at now raising funds through the crypto markets, and then thereby doing something like called a reverse ICO, or in some cases doing a security token offering, because they are able to raise money from a global audience. Otherwise, what happens today is when you try to raise money through stock markets, you go to your country. But if you want to raise money through a global audience, then DeFi-based fundraising is probably the only way in the world today. Any questions on that? All clear? Jatin's question is, can you explain STO a little more? Yeah, sure. So STO is called a security token offering. So what happens in that is the equity shares of your startup will be actually created as blockchain assets, and people who buy those equity shares will be deemed to have ownership of the startup or the company. Today, when you buy something like a Bitcoin, you don't really get ownership of anything. You don't own the platform. You just happen to own some assets. In Bitcoin's case, in Ethereum's case, you don't get ownership. But in an STO, you actually get ownership of equity of a startup or a company. Ritesh's question is, how feasible is raising money through crypto considering the huge volatility and uncertainty? That's a good question. So again, if you are raising an equity issue, then everybody knows that your prices are not going to be that volatile. When we talk about volatility in crypto, we are talking about typical crypto assets which are not backed by anything. Take an example of stable coins like USDT. Because they are backed with the US dollar, their price doesn't fluctuate much. In fact, it hardly fluctuates because it is actually backed by an asset. So similarly, if you are issuing your security tokens, they will not be volatile because they are backed by ownership and equity of a startup or a company. Similarly, you know, in India, the government has made some exemptions that certain kinds of cryptos don't come under the VDA definition and 30% tax. And one of the examples is if it is an NFT backed by a real world tangible asset, could be gold, silver, agricultural commodities, those will not fluctuate like other cryptos. Like today, you even have some companies which have issued gold backed cryptos or NFTs and actually backed by physical gold. The price fluctuates as per the price of gold, not as per crypto. So Ritesh, I hope that answers your question. Jatin's question is, so there are equity recorded on the blockchain, or are they typically given like company shares? Jatin, that's a good question. So I'd like to give an example. There is a state in the US called Wyoming. They have made a special law under which they have said that if you are a Wyoming based company, you can issue your shares directly on the blockchain. So there is a legal recognition, and there the shares need not be given in any other form. Directly issuing them on a blockchain also gives it the full protection of the law. So I hope, Jatin, that answers your question. Vivan's question is, so existing shareholders would get converted to tokens. Is that okay? So yeah, you're talking about Garito. Okay, so Vivan, what happens is, that's if you, let's say now you are already a company which has issued shares. So in that scenario, you will issue all your shares on the blockchain, and then your existing shareholders will also be given tokens. And in this case, your token is an equity token. But I would strongly recommend that if you're going to go down that path, then ideally you should incorporate in a state like Wyoming in the US, because they have a very specific law around this. So that would give you a lot of legal protection. So I would strongly recommend you do that. To the best of my knowledge, Gari, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I don't think they've gone that route. Uh, Prakash says, is it okay taking salary in USDT? Yes, it is, but then you will be taxed flat 30%. It will come under a virtual digital asset, not the stable coin itself, because that now is not clear yet. And I'll tell you why. Because the clarification which the government has made says that if an NFT is backed by a tangible asset, then it is not going to be taxed at that flat 30%. Now, does fiat currency come under that definition of tangible? There is no clarification. So I would say you may get into trouble. So as of today, I'll go with a conservative opinion that if you're taking salary in a US dollar backed stable coin, you would still be liable to pay 30% flat tax. Vivan says, so existing companies would have to be flipped. Yes, in a way. So there are two ways of this flipping. One is an STO, or the other is what we call as a reverse ICO. So yes, you would have to do that kind of a flip. But the benefit is huge, because you now can approach millions of people who around the world are part of the crypto market. So the ability to raise funds from these people becomes easier. Ritesh's question is, can you throw some light on the decentralization problem that many people are raising? So Ritesh, that's a good question, and I think it is mainly because people are a little confused about what decentralization means. I'll give you an example. The world's first crypto is Bitcoin, and everybody says it is highly decentralized, but they're wrong. Firstly, Bitcoin mining, a majority of that is controlled by 5 groups only, 5 mining groups. Secondly, people don't realize that the most important element of Bitcoin is its source code, or the software protocols on which it runs. And that is actually controlled by, I think, 7 developers who control the GitHub repository. So we don't really have anywhere in the world something called a purely decentralized system, because the question is very simple: who will maintain it? I mean, if there is nobody in charge, who's going to upgrade the software? Who's going to put innovation and come out with new things like Ethereum? They've just undergone a huge change where they have gone from proof of work to proof of stake. Now, if there is no entity or a team behind it, who would have actually done all this? So we actually don't have decentralization in the way many people imagine. Things are a little different from what the media talks about. Hope that answers your question, Ritesh. Jatin says, is it allowed in India to give a company's equity recorded on a blockchain? Good question, Jatin. I would say no. As of right now, to the best of my knowledge, no. And that's the reason I'm recommending that you should do it from Wyoming in the US. To the best of my knowledge, that's the only jurisdiction which has specifically come out with a law on putting your shares on the blockchain. If there are other questions, keep putting them. Then the next opportunity which I see arising is advising in the establishment of DAOs. See, now DAOs are a very, very interesting concept, decentralized autonomous organization. So just imagine what happens in a company. So in a company, you have shareholders, and then they vote and they appoint directors, and those directors do business for the company, and at the end of the year, again, they reappoint directors. Now, in a DAO, every single holder of the token can vote on almost all the decisions. So many people feel that DAO is the next step in the evolution of companies. And a few years from now, there will be no companies left. Everything will be a DAO. And I'd like to again mention here that in Wyoming, again, they've made a law under which a DAO can be recognized directly as a company, as an LLC, limited liability corporation. So I believe this is another huge opportunity, and advising projects on how to move things into a DAO is again going to be a very huge thing. Abhishek says there are some crowdfunding platforms on blockchain. How are they managing? So Abhishek, that's a good question. So we would have to see what exactly that platform does, because what you've got to understand is it doesn't matter which the platform is. you've got to understand the token economics of what you're trying to do. So are you issuing a regular token, which could be, inflationary, deflationary, asset backed, or even dual token models are there? Or are you issuing equity based? And then you would go to these platforms and raise the funds. So because there are many platforms, they are following different methods. Jatin says in DAOs, the governance voting rights are given in what ratio? So most commonly it is one token equal to one vote. So in most examples, it would be how many ever tokens you own. So if you own 5% of the tokens, you have 5% of the voting power. So that's a very simple way in which it's done. In some cases, there are dual tokens. So one kind of token would represent governance rights, and another token would be, say, a liquidity token. So in that case, everyone doesn't have both, and only the governance token is the one who gets the votes. So those are some of the models that are available. Bhanu's question is, Government of India has built a registration on blockchain, land registration. Why not? There is a career there. So definitely, I mean, in fact, on this page itself, I'm just sharing the link with you. Give me a second. This is the course page which I'm referring to. Now here, I've actually given links to this. So blockchain adoption is growing the most in India, and active use cases include land registration, blood banks, public distribution system, remote voting, even GST records, and academic certificates. In fact, most people don't know that the CBSE results, academic documents of 10th and 12th standard, are already being stored on the blockchain in India. And I've given two links here. One is to the blockchain.gov.in site. So the government of India has put a dedicated site. I'll just show it to you. This one. I hope you guys are able to see the site. Can you just give me a quick yes if you can see this site? It should have the Government of India logo here. Awesome. So there is a dedicated site called blockchain.gov.in. I want you guys to have a look at it later. I'm putting the URL here. Give me a second. So here the government has actually mentioned, which are the projects which they are actually taking live. And here you can see there is certificate chain, document chain, property chain, and logistics chain. And India is probably one of the only countries in the world where the government regularly comes up with a national strategy on blockchain. So here you can see this is a government document. I'm again sharing the links with you. And they have made a list of more than 40 use cases of blockchain that the government is actually looking at. So I hope that answers your questions. There was a question from Bhanu. So Bhanu, I hope you get the answer to that. Ritesh says, do these government projects use public blockchains? Yeah, Ritesh, that's a good point. So there are different techniques being used. So for example, as far as I'm aware, for many of the document related, in fact, even if you know that the COVID vaccine passports, they are also available on the blockchain. In that case, they are using Polygon. So the choice is open to the government. They could use public blockchains, or they could take the software of these public blockchains and create private or permission blockchains out of it. So depending upon use cases, they could be using various methods. Like I'm sure when voting goes online, it will not use a public blockchain, because voting in an election is a very, very sensitive issue. So depending upon the use case, it could be different. Hope that answers your question, Ritesh. Then another very good opportunity is handling compliance for crypto exchanges. Of course, crypto exchanges are not just in India, they're all over the world. And huge number of crypto exchanges are there. So that's another career opportunity. Then you could be advising on crypto related tax laws. And finally, if you are a lawyer, you could also be prosecuting and defending crypto crimes. Now that is something only lawyers will be able to do, because non-lawyers will not be able to go to a court of law to represent a client. So these are some of the opportunities that are available. Now, what I want to show you also is that what are the kind of jobs and how do we find them? So for example, I'm just sharing a couple of links with you guys. So the first one is for the legal jobs in Web3. So there's a very interesting site called web3.career. I'll tell you the names of some more sites very soon. So they've got about 526 jobs listed, and there's a whole bunch of them around legal counsel, legal manager. Now, what I want you to understand, and then there's also compliance jobs. So when you look at it, please remember both areas are open for you, legal and compliance. Now, in this, what I want you to remember is don't just look for the job in your own country, look for remote opportunities. Because nowadays what is beginning to happen is, thanks to COVID and That's the nature of crypto and Web3, that you can get really amazing jobs sitting in your home country, but you could be working for a startup in some other part of the world. So remote jobs, especially for companies in the US and Europe, pay very, very well. And you could be living in a place like India, spending a lot lesser money, but still earning in US dollars. So these are two of the links that I've shared with you. So do definitely have a look at that. And now let me quickly tell you that what is the kind of action plan that I need you guys to do. So of course, first step would be to learn about blockchain law, for which you're most welcome to join the course that I'm starting out. But what are some of the important things that you need to do? An action plan. So the first thing that I need you all to do, and let me just quickly share this link also with you. Give me a second. Is to attend online and offline meetups, conferences, and mentoring programs. Now, these are happening all across the place. So if you are living in places like Pune, Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, you would have offline events, or in other places, you would have access to online. Attend as many of them as possible, because that is the way you will network with the project teams. And ultimately, whenever you meet someone, immediately connect to them on LinkedIn so that they remember who you are. And that's one of the best ways to get connected to the right projects. And ultimately, these are the ones which are probably going to hire you. So that's step number one. Pankaj's question is, what do you think a product designer should learn to step into blockchain and Web3? So Pankaj, I did a session on non-tech jobs in Web3, in which I spoke about project designers and all. So maybe you could have a look at that video of mine and you would get all your answers on that. The second step is to start posting high value, interesting content on social media, especially LinkedIn. So now that say you've started to learn about blockchain, start writing simple posts explaining to people, different aspects of blockchain law. And that means the right people will start to notice you. And then people say, okay, you know what, this guy really seems to be knowing what he's talking about. And that is one of the best ways of building your profile and getting excellent offers. Now, I can tell you this from experience. I write a lot on LinkedIn and I get approached all the time for really good job opportunities, consulting opportunities. So I can tell you from personal experience, posting good content on Instagram and LinkedIn is really going to benefit you. The third step would be to actively participate in the Discord, Reddit, Telegram, and other channels of these different projects. So if you're talking about legal, go to these channels and post about legal issues. Again, that's a very great way of networking with the teams. Fourth step is to do some internships. Now, if you are a fresher, don't bother about stipend, just make sure you get practical experience. And if you get practical experience in blockchain law, there is nothing in the world that can compete with that. So that's step 4. And then once you are ready, so you've learned about it, you've started to post, and you've also got some internship experience, now is the time you can start looking for openings for freelancing as well as full-time. So here I have mentioned a few of the sites. So web3.career, I think, is one of the best. There's cryptocurrencyjobs.co, there's remote3.co. Of course, LinkedIn is there, Indeed is there, Fiverr and Upwork. So these are some of the best sites that you could be looking for opportunities. Let me know if you have any questions. And then I'll just briefly tell you about this course that I've designed. So I've designed it such a way that there are going to be a series of live lectures. So there are going to be lectures on 8 Saturdays. So Saturdays, I presume, is convenient for everyone. So we start with 8 and then it continuously goes one Saturday after the other. Total 8 lectures will be there of 2 hours each. So it's 11 to 1. And then you have a 60-minute open book exam, which is very practical and case study based. You need to get 70% to pass. And the exam date will be 3rd of December. Now here I have mentioned that these are the profiles for which this is most relevant. So lawyers, chartered accountants, company secretaries, information security professionals, incident response professionals, and fraud control professionals. If you're not from one of these 6, it doesn't mean it is absolutely not for you, because I could not visualize all the different profiles. So according to me, these are the 6 most important. But if you come from any other profile, do get in touch with me and I'll advise you whether it is the right course for you or not. Like if suppose you're looking at becoming a developer, then this is not the course for you. So if you're not from these profiles, get in touch with me before you take admission and I'll advise you on whether it's right for you. Let me look at some more questions. So Pankaj says, what all skills a person needs to prepare for Web3 and blockchain? So Pankaj, in Web3 blockchain, when we talk about it, we can say one is a developer kind of a profile, which is a tech profile, a finance profile, a legal profile, and then there are others. Now for all these four, I've made a lot of posts on my Instagram. You can go and have a look at it there, or you could go to my YouTube channel and I made videos on each of these. So that will be able to answer all your questions. Let me look at the next one. Abhishek says, what is the name of this course? Yeah, so this course is called Executive Program in Blockchain Law. Let me just put the name here. Let me also put the URL here so you can have a look at the syllabus. Let me look at the next question. Okay, link. So link I've just posted here so you guys can have a look at that. Okay. I think those are the only questions that I can see as of right now. Do you have any other questions? Ananya wants to have my email ID. Yeah, so I'll just put it down here. So it's rohasnagpal@gmail.com. And of course, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Okay. Prakash says, I've sent you a WhatsApp message. Sure, Prakash, I'll have a look at that. Okay. Any other questions? Or is this all clear? And you can go through the course page. There are links to the government side. There are links to the strategy report. The syllabus is also mentioned in detail here. And if you want to learn a little bit more about it, there's a small blog post here. And I would strongly recommend that try out the blockchain law quiz on Telegram. So that is something you guys could do right now also. I'm posting the link for that separately. So I made a small LinkedIn channel and I put a blockchain law quiz. So every day I'll be adding new questions to that. So just go there and start taking the quiz. It's good fun and it kind of, gives you some basic knowledge about the field. Any other questions? I'll wait for a minute or two. Ritesh's question is, this is more on Indian or global? So that's a very good question, Ritesh. I would like to clarify here that we can't segregate. It is very important for us to know both aspects because crypto is global in nature. So there is no startup in the world which can say I am only focusing on people of one country. No, crypto is global. So it is important for us to know Indian as well as global laws. So here I told you already what are the Indian laws we covered, and then internationally this is what we are going to do. So as far as the US is concerned, because they don't have a specific law, we are going to see what their Securities and Exchange Commission has made the rules and regulations. That is like what in India, what we call as SEBI, they call it the SEC. Then they have the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, kind of like the ED of India, Enforcement Directorate. We have the Commodities Future Trading Commission, and we have the Internal Revenue Service, which is like their tax department. So we will study what are the regulations they have made. Then we will look at the Payment Services Act of Japan. For Dubai, we will be looking at the law number 4, which regulates virtual assets. For European Union, we'll be looking at the 5th Anti-Money Laundering Directive. For Malta, we'll be looking at the Virtual Financial Assets Act. And for Singapore, we'll be studying the Payment Services Act. So we are going to give equal importance to the Indian and international aspects. So Ritesh, I hope that answers your question. Vikas says he's looking for a blockchain developer. So Vikas, are you hiring or are you looking to get hired? So either way you could, there are lots of ways of getting the right kind of developers. Any other questions? I'll again wait for a few minutes. If you guys have questions, post them. Otherwise, later also feel free to connect with me on social media and I'll be able to answer your questions. Okay, so great. It was nice speaking to all of you, and bye-bye, and I'll see you during the next session. Next week, I'm doing another session. Okay, wait, there is a question. I'll answer that. Next week, I'm also doing a session on building career opportunities in token economics. So if you are interested more in the financial aspects of crypto, then token economics is a good option, and you can attend my session. It'll be the same time next week on the same platform, Creator. So just follow me on that. Someone from LinkedIn says, I'm a fresher with undergraduate in mechanical. I would love to work in the crypto space, but I'm not interested in coding. So in that scenario, what I would recommend is look at the non-tech jobs which are available. I've made a specific video on this, I think it was last week. So go to my YouTube channel and have a look at it. So there are good opportunities for you in non-tech fields also. Vikas says looking to learn. That's awesome. Any other questions? Vivan has posted a link here. I think that's for my session, which is next week. So I would love to see you guys on that. Okay. So nice speaking to all of you. See you. Bye-bye.